Welcome to Decision Space, the only show that takes place right here, in the space between the turns of your favorite games. I'm Pete Wissinger,
I'm Brendan Hansen.
I'm Jake Friedman.
and this is the podcast about decisions in games.
Today, we are doing a What We Talk About episode about Euro games. Perhaps you're a new listener who has been excited to find our podcast thinking that we do recent plays and top 10 lists, but you're in for a rude awakening, because what we actually like to do here is pedantically argue about genres and definitions in games, because we think gaming terminology is incredibly important. Welcome to Decision Space.
Yeah, this is where we earn the pseudo in our pseudo academic moniker that we get.
But today we're really talking about, this is a whole conversation about Euro games. What is a Euro game? What do we think Euro games are? This is not meant to be the be all end all of defining Euro games, giving an entire history of how a genre has grown and changed, how
as
a
much as
word
Brendan
has
would
been
like
used.
that to be what this is.
Well, you got to go. I need to, go on sabbatical, write a book, spend a lot of time flying around the country researching. But we will, we'll talk about some of these things. We'll dip our toes in. We'll talk about our own experiences with this word. We'll talk about where this language maybe comes from, how we get there, and how in some ways this is a word that people have been using for more than 30 years to talk about games, and how fraught that idea is that we could ever be meaning the same thing. So we'll talk about some of the things people, including us people, might mean when we say a Euro game, and that hopefully is what you could expect. And we'll go from there. We'll also have fun. We'll probably use silly words like lexical drift, and we'll be on our way. What do you think? Should we do it, yo?
Wow, people are absolutely hooked. And I think what we're going to start out with is by each of us giving kind of a definition of Euro games. But before we do that, we want to, as we always do when we get a new patron of our show over on decisionspace.com/Patreon, thank them and welcome them. So today we want to thank Darren Neely for becoming a patron of our show. It means so much. Thank you. And also, in case you are a new listener, another thing we do is read reviews whenever we get them. Unfortunately, we don't have any to read today, but please do feel free to leave us a review wherever you listen to this podcast, and we'll try to track it down for a future readout in an episode.
All right, so Brendan, you did some of the legwork on this, and I actually think before we get to our own definitions of a Euro game, you're concerned that people aren't going to sort of like all be starting from the same place. So do you want to give us a little bit of sort of the background of like why this is a term that ever existed? Maybe there was a time where it meant something more concrete than it does today.
Yeah, well, I think it's really interesting that the word has the perspective it does, right? Euro games is talking about a specific place and a specific time in some ways, right? And it's not from the perspective of that place. This was not Europeans saying, these are Euro games about the games they were playing. This is an outsider perspective looking at a group of games and saying like, oh, those are all kind of a thing. I think that outside perspective was that, the history, as I understand it, as I have researched a little bit, not an expert, is sort of the rise of games post World War II in Europe, especially in Germany. There's this movement towards more economic style games that are interested because of an aversion to violence, because of one of the most violent wars in the history of humanity. And over time, those games move beyond Europe. They move beyond Germany, and they end up in the US. And there's this sort of perspective in the 90s of, wow, there's this whole genre of games that feel really different than the games that feel popular and are being made by American companies. That's called those Euro games, and we'll talk about all the characteristics those games might share. And we sort of just kept doing that for 30 years, talking about lots of games that are maybe alike and maybe not alike. And then also people in Europe started using the term too.
Yeah, if I think about, as someone who grew up in the 90s, I was born in 86. I turned 40 this summer, just so everyone knows. We'll have a big 40th birthday party for me on the podcast. But growing up, when I thought about like what a board game is in sort of maybe what we could call like the American mass market sort of
Mm.
board game scene, these were like very low strategy family games that were very like toyetic in a way, right? Like these were games that were sort of treated like toys for kids that maybe you would play with your family. And anything that was sort of like a complex strategy game was probably a war game, was probably a game with a war theme. So I think part of this German style of games being such a kind of big deal coming to the United States is just how different it was from what you saw on shelves and in people's homes for the most part.
Yeah,
Great.
completely. And I from there, I feel like the best place for us to dive in is our own definitions of these games, because that's going to give us sort of a lead into this conversation that is of our own. So maybe I can start. And I'm, you know, as I mentioned, more than 30 years that this word has been being used. So I think this word is meant to be a lot of different things. And some of this episode is going to be unpicking it. But I think for me, Euro games are games that center fairness as their aesthetic ideal. That's the broadest definition I can come up with that sort of spans all of these different types of games that exist. And what I say by this, I mean these are games that don't create opportunity for direct politicking between players, or at least don't encourage it. These are games that when players are coming into conflict with one another, that conflict doesn't feel targeted in a way that could feel unfair, but is usually indirect conflict in some sort of shared space where either I'm taking something from that shared space and denying it from someone else, or I'm claiming a shared space before someone else can. So I'm not literally attacking someone else, but the conflict is happening either in a shared space or through drafting. So yeah, for me, Euro games are games that center fairness as their aesthetic ideal. So like Concordia is a really great example of this. And it goes so far as to like has almost complete open information in that game to know what every move anyone at the table could be doing from the outset of that game. There's lots of different starting paths that players can go on to make every starting position feel fairly fair. You all have a shot at the market as it turns over, and you can pay as much as you want. So I think Euro games often ask players to assess the value of things. That becomes a common form, even in something like T-Call, a Euro game from 1999, where the aesthetic of that game is like, we're going to have these random tiles and you reveal the board as you go on. But also for advanced players, if you don't want that and you want it to be as fair as possible, here's an auction mechanic that you can use to play this game in the most fair way possible. And I'll juxtapose this with something like Root, which isn't really concerned with fairness at all. It has output random dice. It has these variably powered factions, some of which are probably actually just stronger than others. And you can bully, kingmake, or target players directly, all things you don't really see in Euro games. So that's my definition, fairness.
So it
Awesome.
seems like a lot of that is kind of wrapped up in the idea of randomness. If we think about what makes something fair, is that wait? Am I jumping too far there, Brendan? You just
Should
gave me a really
we get
scary
up?
look.
Should we let other people do their definitions too before?
Okay.
We
Oh, so you
nitpick
want to
them?
just you don't
I
want
don't
to
know.
discuss the definitions individually. Let's
I'm
just all
open to whatever
give
you
our
guys think is
definitions,
best.
and then we'll just say who we did the best.
I mean, if we want to just spend the time pulling Brendan's apart, we could do that too.
Well,
Let's make
I think
a
there's a lot
definition
of
salad.
intersection. Yeah. Okay. Like a point salad.
Right. Exactly.
Okay, I'm going to jump in and just share my definition real quick for the sake of argument. And I mean, the first thing I want to say is I'll just throw this out there. I feel like there has been a divergence in paths of kind of the Euro games of old and what we would call a Euro game in the hobby board game market today in 2026. So what I'm trying to define is the game that somebody would bring over to your house for game night and say it's a Euro game today, right? Of a newer game. That's what I'm looking at. And the way I define it is Euro games are games of indirect conflict that reward game mastery over player exchanges. So, like, what that means is like if the preponderance of like who is most likely to win the game in a modern Euro game will have more to do with the person that like understands the game systems and can efficiently maneuver within them than it does having to do with being able to get one over on another player at the table by whatever means or interaction that could exist there. Not that it can't have the latter, but you'll be better suited, doing the former of like mastering the game's internal operating systems.
You're not going to outplay the other players to get an advantage in the game. You're going to outplay the game to outplay the other players, and you're all going to play the same fair game.
You can outplay the other players too, but my argument like is if we're playing this Euro game and I get a couple of good exchanges against you, Brendan, but you have maneuvered better in interacting with the game systems, like I won't be able to overcome that through
Sure.
This makes me think of the episode Brendan and I did on difficulty, where we talked about sources of difficulty. And one source of difficulty is other players, but another source of difficulty is a game system or its puzzle. And so you're saying Euro games, what you're wrestling with more is the puzzle rather than other players' decisions.
Exactly. Yeah. Like, I could say like, oh, I could harm this person, or I could, upgrade my engine, or like get this card that's really going to help me personally in my player puzzle. And in modern Euro games, I think far more often than not, you're going to be better suited doing the thing that's helping you like achieve something within the game system mastery part of it.
Okay. That's great. I'll do my definition and then we can just like free for all battle about it. So my central thesis is that Euro games prioritize puzzle over simulation or conflict. That these are games where the core of the game is some sort of puzzle. To go a little bit deeper, in modern Euro games, I think that puzzle is often associated with some sort of resource management, and that these games have a gameplay arc that is progressive. Often that looks like engine building, but generally what I'm talking about here is that usually in what we would think of as a Euro game, you get maybe stronger or more powerful as you go in some way. Usually you don't get knocked back down the stairs. And oftentimes these are themed games with very abstracted mechanisms. Like I said, they're not really simulation games, they're puzzle games. And so that's my definition.
Okay, so where do we go from here?
Right.
I would like to ask this question of y'all to start. Like, do you think that there has does it make sense to you today where you're sitting right now in 2026 to consider like a modern Euro game a genre unto itself that is different than like the German board games of the 1990s that Brendan evoked, games like Tigris and Euphrates or Tikal?
I would like to take one step backwards from your question, which is, do we think that Euro is a genre, or are we talking about something broader than genre?
Oh,
well, that depends what the definition of genre is.
No, you should define genre.
So what I would say is that, like, once upon a time, with to what Jake is talking about, with these like old school games, that basically these a Euro game was just a game designed by someone in Europe, right? Like it that was not a war game, and because I think about like the idea that like, Dominion and Agricola and El Grande are Euros. What really do those games have in common, right? Like, so I don't think that it used to really be a genre in the way that we think of genre, but I think that today, if I say something is a midweight Euro, that is a genre, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I think, as people were using this term 30 years ago, you're sort of taking in something that feels really different than what you're looking at in general, right? Like Magic the Gathering, rising in the US around the same time that Catan, that El Grande come to the US. As you're saying, Eurogame, it's probably coming from the US. I think that it makes sense that you're sort of like, oh, this feels really different. And over time, we've had a more nuanced perspective. Also, Pete, people are going to roast us if I let you not say Donald X Vaccarino is European. He's an American designer. Dominion
I'm
is an
sorry,
American game.
but Dominion is a game people would have called a Euro.
We called a Euro. Sure. No, totally. Fair point. I think we need to just, where we should go from this episode is also name dropping lots of games, because I think we're helping no one by not name dropping lots of games. So I just want to say, sort of these old school OG Euros, and maybe we'll talk about them more in a little bit, but these more interactive Euro games, El Grande, Tigris and Euphrates, Medina, Through the Desert, Samurai, right? This is the Reiner Knizia, the Kramer, the Kiesling, the Kramer and Ulrich, before things happen a little bit later in time where you get kind of pointality. Catan, sure. But later you get a little more pointality with stuff like Castles of Burgundy. Stefan Feld comes in the picture, right? Even later, Concordia, things like Matt Gertz's game. And then, can I just keep name dropping and you tell me, is it a Euro or not a Euro?
Uwe Rosenberg games,
sure,
right?
Sure.
Like, yeah, right.
Yeah.
So
Barrage.
You're saying at a certain point, once point salad becomes a thing, is that the invention of modern Euros as a genre?
I think Castles of Burgundy for me is like, and maybe this is like centered on my personal experience, is like, to me, like the hallmark of like, okay, now we're doing something different than Tigris and Euphrates. And I'm sure there are many games predating Castles of Burgundy that were thinking along, parallel tracks or whatever. But like that game being such a market success, even today, it's like, community favorite. Like I was looking at like all the pub meeples that were done in this year, in Castle of Burgundy is like the #1 ranked game on that site. So like it's still an incredibly important, huge game, getting new big additions. And I think like the market success of that game has kind of that's something as I would see as kind of a game that is like pointing us somewhere new from where we were before.
And I think the key thing there is that the shift that we're talking about, right? All of those games we mentioned before are shared play space, indirect conflict games. There's games that bend the rules of that greatly. Catan has a robber where you directly target someone, right? Tigris and Euphrates, you can go to war. So these are loose sort of flags, but a lot of these games, shared player space, indirect conflict games. And then you go to what we just talked about with Castles of Burgundy and these sort of personal player space, indirect conflict games, because you're still drafting from that shared board in Castles of Burgundy, taking tiles that other people might still want. You still have this indirect conflict with other people, but you're no longer sharing the same space. So it feels even more indirect than it ever did, because you're not in the same play space. So to me, they feel like the same aesthetic. They're doing the same thing aesthetically, but they do feel meaningfully different. I agree.
Yeah, and I think, Castles of Burgundy was 2011. Agricola is 2007. And so I think Agricola is a hallmark of sort of indirect player interaction so that I can do something in my own space, right?
Mm-hmm.
And people talk about, Bus was actually the first worker placement game. And sorry, YouTube, I'll edit this out of the podcast, but my dog is going absolutely nuts right now and you're hearing me. Soba, chill. Oh my God. Okay.
It's fine.
It's fine. YouTube gets the raw uncut, right? Hey, YouTube, if you've only watched us on YouTube, try listening to the podcast. It's an edited experience, there's music, anyway. So, I think that if you say, oh, well, Bus was actually the first worker placement game, it's like, well, yeah, sure. But like when I play Bus, I don't feel like I'm playing a worker placement game the way we think of that mechanism today, in the same way as if I play an Uwe Rosenberg game, right?
So this brings me back to my question that I'd asked before, which is like, is it worth thinking of this as like a modern Euro as a separate genre from an OG Euro? And as part of that OG classification, I want to say right now that doesn't mean that only would include games that came out in this certain time period. I would say there are games that are being published today over the past few years that would like also fit in that OG category. And maybe we could spend a little bit of time thinking about like, if that is true, like what are, markers of the modern Euro genre and what are markers of this other genre? Because I think Agricola and Castle Burgundy are maybe illuminating of that too, and has some differences across those lines as well.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting, like, because when I think about a modern Euro, first of all, I'll just say this, and this is maybe getting too like direct, but like it is a board game. Like literally, when I think of a Euro today, it has a board and a lot of components. I think if you just have a card game today, it's hard for me to see it as a Euro game, right?
What about Carcassonne?
I think if Carcassonne came out today, I don't know, like
tiles, half board, half card,
right? Yeah,
hybrid.
I guess like I'm just so caught up in like what I think of as like the resource optimization puzzle being what people mean today when they say Euro. And maybe I'm too hung up on that. But I think that when your average board gamer says, "Oh, have you played that new midweight Euro game?" People are imagining a game with a board and resources and engine building that like there are specific markers. It's a more concrete thing today when that term is used.
I think that is true. And I think part of the reason that you can't see card games as being part of the modern Euro family is because, like, one of the things that I think marks a modern Euro game is not the fact that it has a board specifically, but that it has, like, it emphasizes, like, low impact randomness. And, like, card games tend to have high impact randomness where, you've got a big deck of cards, different people are getting different things, and that's not something that I believe tends to be common in modern Euros, which are more, I think, to your point, Brendan, like even more so than in the Castles of Burgundy and Concordias today, are like prioritizing fairness and, like, even to a finer point, like good vibes, like very like accessible fun. Everybody's gonna have a good time when a modern Euro hits the table.
Yeah, for me, it's interesting, Pete, because I think Cascadia is a game that stands out to me as a game that I might call a Euro-y game. It has indirect conflict. There's no player elimination, right? It's an efficiency puzzle, more or less. At the end of the day, it's an efficiency puzzle, and there's no board in that. But I
want to say real quick, you saying, well, it doesn't have player elimination. I think that's an old categorization idea because like,
we've just done
player
away
elimination
with
has been done away with so thoroughly at this point that like we can't be like, what? It's a game that everyone plays all the way to the end. It must be a Euro. Like I think that's an old way of thinking, right?
Cascadia
but
is
at
like
the outset of Euro
example of a modern Euro. Like I feel like that's fits in perfectly there.
What is, Jake?
Cascadia.
Thank you. Okay, so I have two ideas of what we could do from this point, because I agree, Jake. They're sort of the same but separate things. But for me, I just think are we playing in a shared space, or are we not playing in a shared space? That to me is the broadest definition of sort of what feels like this sort of more interactive, sort quote unquote OG Euro. We're playing in a shared space, so it's by nature more interactive, or it is more of a modern style Euro where it's emphasizing a personal puzzle taking place that I am controlling in my own direct space. So it's taking the indirect conflict so literally that we can't even exist in the same space anymore. I'm going to be here, you're going to be there, and we'll reach into only a space where non-scoring things happen to take things.
Agreed.
Can I ask one? I have two games that I would say, would you guys call these Euros? Okay. And I promise I won't do this forever. Okay. But like, okay. Question number one is, if it came out today, would you call El Grande a Euro game?
Yes.
I would call it OG Euro game, but
If
not
it came
a
out
modern
today,
Euro
it's such a
game.
hard hypothetical.
Right?
Yeah.
That's
Right,
what I
that's
want
what
to do here. That's
yeah,
what I
okay.
think that's more useful
Okay, that's fine.
personally to be
My
like,
s-
which of these would it fit in?
My second question, and I think with the
But I guess
Cascadia
that's like the
example,
broader category. Sure,
sure,
Euro.
yeah. So you would say it is not a modern Euro because you are creating two distinct
Right. I guess
buckets to put
if we're
things in.
okay, so let me just say this to stop being annoying. Like if if all of that is under the umbrella of Euro, then yes, it would be a Euro, but then it's useless. The term is useless. So I'm like trying to find a path that is like more helpful.
That's why I like, to me, like, I don't know, something like apiary. I'm like, yeah, that's a Euro, right? It's got all the things a Euro
For
has,
sure.
But
That's a
then I'm
modern
like,
Euro.
then I was like, okay, like Azul. You all are going to tell me Azul
Okay.
is a Euro game. You're both going to tell me that right now. You're going to say, Pete, of course, duh, it's a Euro game. But I'm like, I mean, it like, if someone said, hey, you want to play a Euro game and we played Azul, I'd be like, huh, that was not
Az-
what I was expecting.
Azul came up for me when I was thinking about this too. Of like, okay, so I've been doing this separate thought experiment for you from you guys of like, would this be like an OG Euro or a modern Euro? And of course, I was thinking like Kramer and Kiesling's catalog, and I think Azul has uh, hallmarks of both, like of just like how there could be hybrid games between like you know American style war games and Euro games. Stuff like Blood Rage, right, has been like kind of hailed as sort of like a great example of like a hybrid. Then it would make sense too that there could be like hybrids between
Old school and modern.
exactly.
We use
And
early modern, right? It'd be a
yeah, dude, it's kind
historical
of
term.
yeah, I think we're starting to move into the postmodern OG phase right now, actually.
Postmodern OG Euro.
But it might be useful to think about like, okay, what about Azul makes it feel like a modern Euro game, and what makes it feel like an OG Euro game? And I think maybe this is stupid and uninteresting to people, but like I think like trying to maybe pick apart some of these things could be helpful or interesting or fun.
Okay. I'll jump in with things. One, is Azul an efficiency puzzle? Yes, it is. So it smells like a Euro, right? In some way, shape, and form. Two, is there indirect conflict? Yes. Is it indirect conflict that can be really, really mean? Yes. Okay, now it's OG. Am I playing in a shared space? No, I only take from the shared space, right? Now it feels
Yeah.
more like that more modern personal player puzzle. I think it's both too. I agree with
You're
you.
just describing a Paul game.
So here's the thing.
Right?
You can't call it a ball game.
I want to bring I'm going to bring one more kind of like potential categorization thing. I'm going to try this out on you guys. Tell me how you think it feels. But I think like OG Euros tend to be more themeless, and modern Euros tend to have like more theme baked in, like kind of like it's more core to the system and mechanisms.
So
Like
I would agree that there was not as much effort put into the theme in OG games, but I don't necessarily think modern Euros are actually any more thematic. That was one of my definitional points, is that like they're dressed up with a theme, but they're not simulations, right? Like
But
these are
OG
games that have a puzzle wrapped in a theme.
but OG games are like look like abstracts. Like when you take a game like Medina or like Tigris and Euphrates, or even I mean El Grande has like you're on a map, so that makes it like not an abstract, but
That
like
makes it a war game, yeah.
yeah, right. So but like these games feel like very abstract, and I think like you could argue about like how like agential or whatever the theme is in modern Euro games, but they do feel like a little bit more like we're baking bread, and here's how you bake the bread, and then you're going over here to get the ingredients, and then like upgrading my oven,
Right, like to
and
build a road, you need a wood and a brick.
I think
okay, so
I
maybe
wanna-
not.
I'm picking up what you're putting down, Jake, because I think that there is an aesthetic to this sort of OG school of Euro that is like, let's do a lot with a little in terms of rules. So if we're gonna
Yes.
juxtapose old school Euros with war games, the goal is to have as short of a rule book as possible for as much game as possible, right? That's part of the aesthetic here that we're talking about. And by the time you get to 2016's Great Western Trail, arguably one of the most beloved Euros of the last decade, it is a much more thematically interested game. It's more thematically interested than something like Tigris and Euphrates. It even, it has all these little buildings, you're delivering cows, has different types of cows. It lets you take on these different roles. You can be the builder, you can be the cow deliverer. I don't remember what the third strategy pillar is. But anyway, that's a really different thing. But a Great Western Trail is a Euro game, but it also represents this like shift towards more complex Euro games that are in some way saying like,
Yes, I
let's
think that's
trade those
important.
simplified rules. And Uwe gets to be a bridge in this in some way, shape, and form, right? Agricola in its day is a move towards something more complex than a lot of the games
sure.
that came before it. Not as complex as games like Barrage or Great Western Trail.
Feast for Odin.
A Feast for Odin, right? But it is more complex, and it's this move towards like, what can we add to make something that is still a Euro, but is now this own more complex thing. And I think that's another lineage of games: the point salad, the OG, and the complex Euro that should be considered.
So if we're going to sort of differentiate between what a Euro looked like in the past to today, we could say that Euros maybe used to be much more minimalist in various ways, right? They were
Yes.
minimalist in presentation, they were minimalist in rules, they were minimalist. I can't say that word 3 times. Minimalist in components, right? So, and what we've seen now, like to me, I feel like Euro means a puzzle. And I don't know that that always was the case, right? Like when I play these, what you all are calling OG Euros, I get closer to a sort of like interesting decision. Whereas with modern Euros, I'm like fighting against a system in order to get to a space of decision. It makes me think about our discussion with John Perry, where John Perry talked about complexity versus depth and used complexity. He backed away from this categorization. He chickened out, but he talked about complexity being a source of noise between yourself and a deep decision. And OG Euros were not as noisy as modern Euros, where today I have to say, oh, well, I have to gather these resources and convert them to these resources and then build this building. Because if I build this building, I can convert these resources into points. Whereas, and doing all that and knowing how to do all that and pulling it off is like the joy of playing a modern Euro. And that was not always the case. It was much closer to making the decision rather than how to get to the thing I've decided to do.
Yeah, I have a couple things to say. One is going back to Brendan's point, kind of about the complexity, which is to say, like, in and this is going to be super annoying, but like, I think in some ways that maybe is worth noting. Like, interestingly, like the way we're talking about modern Euros as these games that are like more interested in complex rule sets, more interested in like simulating of a theme through like rules systems. Like it is harking back and like almost hybridizing the original definition of like American style game designs, right? That we're more interested in, I think, like being kind of theme forward or simulationist war games. So that's point number one. Okay, respond to that while I remember what I was going to say on point number two.
I think that like, okay, so we all remember once upon a time, people would say that there were Euro games and there was what was called Ameritrash games.
How dare you?
I know. And like, also, I think that like people shouldn't be afraid to call something Ameritrash anymore. Don't take yourself so seriously. It's fine. But anyway, those were games.
You're not actually calling all those games trash when you say that, Pete?
crazy. Yeah. But
Oh my
like
gosh.
when I thought of like that style of game was more about direct conflict and high randomness, right?
Mm.
Like that's what people meant. You guys
Risk.
know the YouTube like TikTok or whatever guy Pro ZD? Have you seen his video on like a Euro game versus an Ameritrash game? It's
I have not.
hilarious. I just recommend everyone check out Pro ZD Euro
Okay.
Ameritrash. Like,
Okay, I
yeah,
remember what I was
I
gonna
thought you were
say,
going to do an
which is
impression.
which is
no,
okay. So Pete, you were talking about how like the puzzle, like your games are like very puzzly. And so one thing that I feel is different in Euro games, modern Euro games, and like OG Euro games is that like where like the variability and like novelty comes from. Where I think in modern Euro games, like that comes from like variable setups of the board, right? Or variable decks of cards. You use some of the decks of right,
variable
like
player
things,
powers.
player powers, exactly, like things that are like baked into the game that are going to give you a different situation every single time you play it because of like the game system that you have to master to win, have fun, and that's great. This is not besmirching that at all. Whereas the much more simplistic, minimalist OG Euro games of old, like the novel game comes from decisions that your opponents made and creating novel boards like on a shared space or whatever that you've never seen before, and therefore like creating really interesting implications, which I think, Pete, is something that you really gravitate towards much more so than the former.
Yeah, for sure. I think that I'm probably the host who feels the most like someone just poured cold water on me when someone describes a game we're about to play as, a midweight Euro.
Mm.
Because like to me,
So what are
that
you what are you
says, right,
feeling
what does
when they
that
say
say to
that?
me? What does
What?
that
Yeah,
say to me?
exactly.
What that says to me is I'm going to teach you a game with a lot of complicated abstract rules that are only barely connected to a theme, which means the theme won't help you remember the rules. You just have to remember them all. And that there's going to be a puzzle, and anyone who's played the game before will understand the puzzle better than you. So you just kind of have to pull levers and see what happens, because people who have played it before understand the solution to the mathematical puzzle that you have to discover while playing. And in fact, what other people are doing doesn't really impact what you're doing anyway. So you should just sit there and, get a participation trophy and try your best, because what you do is not going to affect other people's pro strategies, because that's the kind of game it is.
But don't worry, because the people that are pros aren't gonna ruin your day either by
Sure. I
stomping you
wish
out.
they would. I would love someone to just
I
like spit in my soup and hand it to me, right? Like that's
know. Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I think that's right, and I'm just gonna chime in and say, like, I don't think it was always the case when since I've been in this hobby, which has only been a little over it's like 10 years, right, a decade in this hobby, where my like one of my first associations with like Eurogame would be like, this is going to be a long teach, and
Mm.
I think that speaks to something that's kind of like another thing that is like a divergence of genres, where like the OG Euro game can be like just as heavy in board game geek weight, right? Like splatter games or whatever. A good example of this, for good reason, because they're like very complicated systems, and there's a lot going on that's going to make steam come out of your ears when you're playing them. But the teach is going to be quick because the complexities are like sort of emergent from a simple set of rules.
Yeah. So, Pete, but given everything you just said, and I think this is to Jake's point too, if I pulled out the White Castle or Bamboo, cold water for you.
I mean, like, here's the thing. I like playing games. I like learning games. So, like, I'm probably going to have a good time. It's just not the thing I'm going to pull off the shelf and say, let's play this.
But if I pulled out Keyflower,
Well,
what do you
I've
say?
played Keyflower, right? Like,
Yeah,
I'm excited about Keyflower because it is
great.
interactive and nasty, right? And so if someone tells me this is a Euro game, but if they just say, but it's a highly interactive Euro game, which of course they present as an exception to expectations, right? They point it out, right? Because it's not part of the expectations.
And
Then I'm
maybe
more
that's
bought in.
because we don't have like the ability to
Right.
say like, oh, this is actually like an OG Euro game
Sure.
style game, right?
Yeah. Well, and I think that like when I was new to the hobby, Euro games were very exciting to me because there was a joy in just like sitting around a table and learning something complex with my friends and just sort of operating systems like that, which I'd never done before, was just really exciting because it was novel. And I'm kind of at a point now to where the novelty of a midweight Euro has kind of worn on me. The best Euro I've played for the first time in the last year was Kalamala. And I would call Kalamala an old school style Euro game, right? It's a modern game that looks and plays like a game that came out in like 2003, right? And so that is a little bit telling, I think.
I'm curious to know, like, if other people have games that, you know, came that they can think of that came out recently that you might describe more in the kind of former, like the OG category, like you. But Pete, I want to chime in just because I completely agree with you, and I think for like I've been thinking about since we just did our top 10, you know. The first few years of the show, I was like had a ton of Steffenfeld game, and I still think those are absolutely wonderful games. You know, it's like my number one game. Um, and I think for me, like why has that sort of shifted and what I'm really excited for has a lot to do with like the novelty of learning new rules. Where now I'm just in a place of like it's you know almost always like I've seen something like that. You know, I'm not. It's not like okay, this game has something called deck building. What's that? You know, it's like okay, this is a deck building game. Okay, and also has like worker placement. Okay, you know, and we're, you know, I've seen all these things. So I'm so much more excited about playing a game that I already know and have played a bunch, but I know I'm going to see some, like, you know, I'm going to have a unique experience with the people I'm playing with and going to have that like novelty and excitement emerge from that.
I think that there's something really exciting whenever your brain engages with something that it can't really categorize into known definitions. And that's regardless of genre, of what format the art is in, right? So if you experience a new genre of music, oftentimes it is really novel and interesting just to listen to the new thing because it's new. And I think that's what y'all are talking about. But I have an example that gets at what you were saying, Jake. This sort of a new example of a game that feels more like the sort of older OG style Euro, the more interactive shared board Euro. So Underwater Cities comes out in 2018, undeniably a complex Euro. Not one I would put in that category. That's more of this personal player puzzle, efficiency puzzle, complex Euro that's point salad.
But a great game.
Sure. Yeah. Good game. Big kelp. Let's go. But in 2019, 1 year later, Barrage comes out. And all of a sudden, Barrage is a very complex game. It's also, Jake, to your point of the what you pulled in, or maybe it was Pete, a more thematically interested game. You're generating electricity. How are you doing that? You're building these different components in a shared space. And can you directly interact with everyone? No, but you're taking the same things and you can block the spaces that they want. And you can use the objects on the board in a way that other players wouldn't want. So for me, that's an example of a modern Euro that is highly complex. So it's doing the complex Euro thing, but also has a lot of the aesthetics of these sort of OG Euros in that it's highly interactive. So for me, if we can find these blends between these different subgenres of Euros, that's a OG complex Euro.
Yeah. Yeah. I
But
think
not
the
really
easiest
OG.
way, I think it's tough. Like, yeah, that one for me, like as well, feels like a clear case of like a hybrid between the two.
Yeah.
Because of just like the complexity of the rules system, and you get like the personal engine going with like your own board to upgrade, etc. One for me is Renature. Pete, you played that recently. Did that feel like a Euro game to you?
Well, what's funny is that doesn't feel like a Euro game, but I understand that it feels like a Euro game if we are not talking about modern Euros, we're talking about old school Euros.
Right. So okay,
Because
yeah, that's
yeah,
my point.
right.
So I
Yeah,
think the
right.
easiest
Because it
way to
reminds me of something like Tigris and Euphrates or something like that, right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
So, and I think the easiest way to find like games that are coming out today that are sort of like OG Eurogame genre games are it's like the same people that were making them in the 90s, like Wolfgang Kramer
Yeah.
Well,
and Reiner Knizia, like a game like Zuvadis or whatever is maybe like modern Eurofied a smidge, but still kind of like an OG style of
it's like
game.
there's almost nothing about Zuvadis that reads Euro to me. Like almost nothing. Like it's not even an efficiency puzzle, really, right? Like it is just a pure negotiation game. So like if we're saying Zuvadis is a Euro, then I'm like, what are we talking about? Like, is it a Euro just because Ryder Knizia designed it?
That's
Like,
why.
I think
Yeah.
I think you're
in
on
that
my
case,
team
yeah.
now, Pete. I think
Yeah.
like we need to have
Right.
a new genre,
yeah, because
an
like
old genre,
because like
an
another
OG genre.
probably if it is a Euro, then my favorite modern Euro is Dune Imperium. Now, Brendan, you haven't played Dune Imperium, but Jake, you have.
Mhm.
Like, I don't think it's a lot like modern Euros. I think it's like this like very modern game, right? It's like a hybrid mix of several mechanisms. It's directly interactive. It's incredibly theme forward. Like it almost plays like I almost feel like I'm playing an old school Ameritrash game, even though I'm playing like an almost zero randomness worker placement game. And so it's just kind of like if that is a Euro,
Yeah.
then we're again, we don't want to be a podcast right now where we're just telling people that like this doesn't mean anything and we're confused. But Jake, would you label Dune Imperium as a modern Euro, an old school Euro, a hybrid, or something else?
Yeah, I mean, if I could call it a hybrid, I think I have to. The games it like reminds me most of are kind of like the like a game like Agricola, right? It shares a lot, I think, in terms of like you've got important shared space of interaction, but you've also got like a lot of randomness and variability inserted into the game with
But there's
like
no
game
personal
system
play
itself.
area at all. Like everything is contested.
Your deck is kind of a personal play area, I think. I mean, it's a deck building
Okay, I
game,
get
right?
it. I get what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Sure.
mean, it's a tough one. I mean, and we're not going to be able to find like a perfectly clear answer for everything, right? Just like you can't even, going just saying like all these are Euros and all these are like Ameritrash games. Like there's still stuff that's in between.
It's funny, Brendan, because in our original discussion, you were just like, are we just talking about interactive efficiency puzzles and non-interactive efficiency puzzles? Is that really just sort of what we're talking about with the different genres of Euros?
Yeah.
It's like we got to figure out the sliders here, and interactivity is definitely a super important slider.
Big slider. Okay.
Complexity of rules. 100% another slider.
Big slider.
Right?
Yeah.
So
if a game has a high
complexity,
rules,
low interactivity. That's a modern Euro.
That is for sure a modern Euro. But I think there are some other sliders that are important too.
I think there's the
I keep cutting off.
Shared play space or drafting from a shared space, but we're not putting our own pieces in that space.
I think that's in the interactivity slider. I think that's
oh, we're just we're gonna make our model.
We're already capturing that.
Okay.
What about we've been dancing around this, but what about like luck and randomness? Like, is there a slider for that, Brendan? I think this feeds most directly into your like aesthetic fairness definition. So if you wanted to take the first crack.
Well, just real quick to go back to my Dune Imperium example, I've played Dune Imperium games with people who hate this deck called the Intrigue deck because the Intrigue deck is a deck full of random bullshit. And and so people who want to play it like a Euro and say, no, this is an efficiency puzzle Euro, and if I do the puzzle best, I should win, hate this Intrigue deck, which is not balanced. It's going to give you randomness in terms of whether the card you draw is actually useful or not. And so that is one of the sliders, right? Is that randomness slider.
But the thing is, the intrigue, I'm so sorry because I was like, we have to throw to Brendan because we keep cutting off and now I'm just jumping in again. But like the intrigue cards are like that is not an OG Euro mechanism,
No,
right?
absolutely not.
No,
That's
but
more
it's
Ameritrashy.
It's more exactly. Like, so it's like a slider that's taking it away from OG game, but not towards modern
Correct.
Euro.
So
Yeah.
randomness is our third slider. We've got interactivity, we've got complexity, and we've got randomness. Brendan, tell us we're all wrong.
Well, I think that it's a really interesting point because there are games that fall into this category that are sort of in that quote unquote OG style, like Medina, that don't have any randomness. Medina functionally feels like an abstract, right? You just start with all your pieces, you're laying them out. But I think we could go astray if we say randomness is a slider because Tigris and Euphrates has a lot of randomness, but it has so much randomness that it gets smoothed out. And I think that's a point that's important, right? There's so many tiles that get drawn from the bag that overall the expected outcome of those is going to sort of normalize in a way that it's not spiky randomness.
So maybe we're talking about like
Yes,
unknowable
right.
information.
I think, well, maybe, but even in Tigris, you have unknowable information. And I want to give another example. El Grande, right? You might say, like, oh, not a lot of randomness in El Grande. True. You all have this hand of cards, 1 through 13 or whatever, that is your hand of cards for the whole game. And you get to choose when you play those cards. A more random version could be draw 3 of those cards and you get to pick one of those to play this game. It's a Euro, so they don't do that. But what you do is the ability cards come out randomly about when those are going to happen. And those play a really important role in that game. And it doesn't, to me, make it feel less like a Euro. It's just that our relationship to that randomness is we all share it. It all comes out, and then we all get to make a decision based on it. So it feels more normalized. In that case, normalized in a different definition because we all share it randomly pushing in one way or the other versus, right, the expected outcomes being kind of all the similar because we're drawing so many tiles from a bag or rolling so many dice. So I just think it's less likely that you have something like Root where you play perfectly and then you walk your cats in there, you know you're gonna roll perfectly, and you just roll double zeros. And then you're like, okay, I'm gonna use my next action and I'm gonna do it again. And you just roll double zeros again. And you're like, oh, all of my right. That's what we're talking about. This really spiky, unexpected outcome completely shaping the game. That's not Euro at all.
I think that. Okay, sorry. Finish your point. Okay,
Oh, my point's done.
I think you nailed it. Your point is well taken, heard, and I think I just want to try and summarize it a little bit as a slider, which is that I think that you're exactly right when it's like spiky randomness to smooth randomness. A hallmark of like Euros as an umbrella is that these are games of skill, right? Like the more skillful player is likely to win compared to a game, you know, like the toyetic American games like Mousetrap or whatever, that are not trying to be games of skill. However, there is a difference in the way like randomness manifests. Absolutely, there's randomness in. I might even say there's more randomness in like OG style games than in the modern games. But I think the real truth of that is like, and I think I tried to say something like this at the very beginning in my definition too, which is like kind of like the like the impact of randomness on like player outcomes or like the outcome of the game feels much bigger in OG games than it does in sort of like the aesthetic design of modern Euros.
Well, what I actually think we've done is tiptoed back into my definition of a Euro because
No,
I
that's
said
what I
that
was trying to
Euros,
do.
I say that Euros have a progressive gameplay arc, right? That these are games where you are building as you go, right? And that was not necessarily true of OG Euros, right? I think about playing a game of Catan and then no one will trade with me. The robber's on my space. I'm getting no resources, right? I'm like, I feel like I've lost progress. Or I'm playing Tigris and Euphrates and I lose a war and then like all my leaders get knocked off the board. That, you know, Euros, I think today tend to be games where we're like adding things and things are not being taken away. And is that maybe what we mean by spiky?
I'm digesting the question. I'm thinking about it. Jake's on mute.
Jake's on mute.
And he really has a point he wants to make. So I will say, I think what I mean by spiky is that there's room for an unexpected outcome that feels external to the player is when I'm using spiky in that sense right now. What I mean in that case.
I think it's just like how likely is it at the end of the game for somebody to feel like I got unlucky. That's
Sure.
kind of that, and I mean that's like a psychological thing, but like in Castles of Burgundy, right? It's like, yeah, you could definitely get unlucky by rolling like doubles a lot, but it just, it's all of the instances of randomness are like low impact, right? It doesn't have that big moment, like you're saying, like I lost a lot of resources in this war or a bad roll.
Or if let's just take it one step further, if it's unfair to get unlucky, or in a Euro game, you don't lose because you feel you got unfairly targeted by two players, right? So Pete and Jake just decided halfway through the game because I wouldn't do something that they were going to target me directly and ruin my game in a game of Root. That's not a Euro.
Or Catan.
Sure. And I think Catan is
Or
a good
Tikal.
example of one of these games that came at a really specific point in time. And when you're looking at this lump sum of games, the aesthetic of Catan is different than the aesthetic average of a lot of games that came after and got called Euros.
Right.
And that's okay. Right?
Yeah, for
Sylvanas
sure.
is a Euro game because it's designed by Knizia. Catan is a Euro game because it's like the original Euro game of the people who came up with the word Euro game to talk about this thing, probably. Or maybe they were talking about D-Mocker. I don't know.
I also think, like, to your definition, Brendan, talking about how what Euro gamers care about is fairness.
Yeah.
Right now, I'm not talking about a genre of games. I'm talking about like players,
A type of player,
right?
Yeah.
Expectations. I think something that friend of the show, Jamie Stegmaier, gets dragged for a lot is he loves decks of cards with a lot of stuff, right? Jamie just loves like games that will constantly show you new things while you play. And so he loves asymmetric player powers in his Euros. He loves big decks of cards that do different things in his Euros. And so because of that, a lot of people complain about Stonemaier games not being perfectly balanced because, in viticulture, someone else drew a summer visitor that really helped them. And when I drew a summer visitor, it didn't help me at all. Right. And so what, some people don't like Stonemaier games for is that they take away from this aesthetic ideal of fairness, right? Is that maybe fair to say?
I absolutely think that's fair to say. Can we now, as a way to close the show, the grand finale, I think we should do what all good grand finales do. Read through a list and classify things. So we should read through the BGG Top 100 and say if things are Euro or not Euro.
Okay.
What are our like genres?
Yeah. Okay. So we've got modern Euro.
Yep.
Old school Euro. And not a Euro. Not a Euro. Let's just say not a Euro.
Not a Euro.
And then maybe
I threw in
some sort of hybrid.
Complex, super complex to me is another marker. And I think
we call super
modern,
complex a modern Euro.
I don't think we're saying that's hybrid.
No hybrid. Okay, so modern Euro, old school Euro, not a Euro. Those are our three categories.
Okay. So just for the sake of genre definitions, something that's like not super like we're saying Castles of Burgundy is called.
You know what, Brendan?
Euro.
We'll cross this bridge when we get there. Yeah.
Okay.
So,
fine.
like, for example, the number one game on Board Game Geek is Brass Birmingham, which we're already in a quagmire because
yeah, I was gonna skip that one
because probably it's we would call it like an old school Euro, right?
Yeah,
I guess.
Arc Nova is the epitome of a modern Euro.
Yes.
Modern
Pandemic
Euro.
Legacy.
Okay, I changed my mind. We can allow hybrid.
Co-op's not.
Co-ops are not. Euros are not.
Euros. Yeah.
No, is Brass like a hybrid? It's a hybrid modern and OG Euro. Is that
what's funny is like
say?
I think that
or it's like a hybrid
economic
game and OG.
Well, I was going to say I think that the genre of economic game shares a lot with both modern and old school Euros, right?
Yeah.
Like probably more with old school Euros when we think about an economic game.
Yeah.
But yeah, because it's all about that shared space interactivity.
It's a subgenre.
Okay, let's keep it
snappy.
Euros. Let's
keep
it snappy.
Great.
Gloomhaven, not a Euro. The two Dune Imperium games, we've already been there. Twilight Imperium, not a Euro.
Not a Euro.
Lord of the Ring, not a Euro.
Not a Euro.
Terraforming Mars is the modern Euro. Like
modern
literally,
Euro.
if I was to say what is the epitome of modern Euro, it might be Terraforming Mars.
Yeah.
Star Wars
Star Wars
Rebellion, and
Rebellion.
Spirit Island, and Gloomhaven Jaws the Lion. None of them are Euros.
Not Euros. Yeah. I do think it's
Dang,
really
there aren't
important.
very
Can we
many
dwell on
euros.
What?
Spirit Island not being a Euro, I think is kind of important. Because to me, this is absolutely not a Euro. But why?
Why?
Because
why not? I
because-
might call it a Euro. Like
I think it is an efficiency puzzle.
Yeah.
It's just a big engine builder. It's just solo or cooperative.
Yeah,
I think a lot of that comes down to
all solo games are Euros.
Well, are cooperative games doing something as a genre that feels different than what a lot of other Euros are doing? And I think in a way, yes. Like if you walked up and said, "Do you want to play a Euro game?" to someone, and then you walked up to someone else and said, "Do you want to play a co-op game?" They're going to imagine really different things. And what's the better way to describe Spirit Island?
I think an hour into the episode is the wrong time to have the co-op discussion. That's what
co-op
Euro.
great.
Gaia Project.
Gaia Project is so I think the Terra Mystica series are a very good example of a modern Euro that I like.
Yeah. Okay. Good. I'm with you on modern Euro as well. Sort of in like the good.
Okay, I think this is where you need the sliders because you do have a shared play space. They just
is
don't really
interactive for sure.
Do very much in it though. It's
high
less.
puzzle.
It's de-emphasized.
A high puzzle.
Yeah.
Resource management puzzle, which is like
and it's highly
a big thing of what
complex.
I think of as a Euro. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's complex.
And it's got and it feels kind of like they're adding a lot of like thematic stuff to the asymmetric powers and stuff. So
Twilight
Struggles.
Twilight Struggle is not a Euro.
Castles
of Burgundy
modern
is
Euro.
Modern. Okay, SETI. Everything I hear about SETI makes me think this is a game I would hate to play. Just the way that everyone describes it, I'm just like, this is the kind of Euro that like.
It's like the hottest game of the past like 3 years or something.
Yeah, it's like ugh. If someone says like, oh, it's like a really, really complex Euro game that takes 2 hours or more to play, I'm just like, oh no. Like
I don't know anything about, I haven't played the game. I haven't like watched a video of it, but it feels like a modern Euro for sure.
Yeah.
Slay the Spire.
Let us know. And
Slay the Spire, no. Not a Euro.
Through the Ages.
Probably.
Seems kind of Euro-y, but
I haven't played it. Isn't it a tableau builder?
That's so interesting. None of us have played Through the Ages.
Maybe we should deep dive Through the Ages.
It's when I aspired to play 10 years ago. We're skipping Lord of the Rings.
Are there any other interesting questions? Ask us only Euro game.
Seven Wonders Duel. Seven Wonders
Modern
Duel.
Euro. Modern Euro.
No, like that's. I don't think so. Right? Like, what's it? Like, if anything, it's OG. Like, it's so interactive. Like, it's like. How about this? It is whatever genre Azul is.
Yeah, it's like hybrid. Yeah. It's like dual games add like just a different. That's like a different thing too, right? Because like the interaction slider on anything that's a 1v1 goes way up because it's zero sum.
Right.
We're
not going in order anymore. We're just saying stuff.
Just saying interesting.
Sky Team is not. Like I think limited communication co-op is its own thing.
Wingspan.
Modern Euro.
It is. I think Wingspan is like a hallmark of modern Euro, but like without a lot of the complexity.
Would you say
the Crew?
No. Trick taking is not a Euro mechanism.
Yeah.
It's like we're claiming trick taking.
Well, okay, what about this? What about Clank? Because Clank, like, I guess deck building comes from Euro games.
I think
Clank feels Ameritrashy. Clank feels so grounded in its theme. Like it's like playing Slay the Spire almost. Like obviously they're both deck builders, but it's like a deck builder where your deck is not doing something economic. It's not really, I don't think, an efficiency puzzle in the way we talk about efficiency puzzles. It's, I would say Clank is not a Euro. Just straight up not a Euro.
I would say modern Euro.
Wow. So I get to be the tiebreaker. That's really interesting. I think Clank aesthetically is definitely indirect interaction, but it has a mechanism that isn't common in those types of games, right? In Clank, you're not taking out your crossbow and shooting Jake in the back. What you're just doing is you're making him see how greedy he is and getting out of there first. So I think it shares that Euro aesthetic without feeling very Euro-y to me also.
I think I think maybe I just see deck building games in general as more of like a Euro-y mechanism, right? It's like you're taking the yeah, I mean if you'll go with me in thinking of like your personal deck as like a personal play space, right? Then it has like all the hallmarks of Castle of Burgundy of like, yes, there's interaction over like a row of cards that we're like indirectly competing over, but then we're taking it back and more or less doing our own thing.
But like if you say any game with an efficiency puzzle is a Euro, then Root is a Euro.
Root is
Which
not
it's
a
not.
Euro.
Correct. Agreed. Right. So, like, I don't know. To me, it doesn't have the aesthetics of a Euro. If someone said, "Hey, let's play a Euro game," and we played Clank, they'd be like, "Huh."
I mean, you guys know way more about Root than me, but like, I don't think the efficiency puzzle of Root is like
Depends on the faction you're playing.
the big part. Okay, I mean, okay, so like you can play. I forgot that's the whole thing with Root. You could like play a Euro game faction if you want the Euro game experience. But like, I mean, I think if you're like, yeah, this game is at its core an efficiency puzzle. That is a very Euro-y thing. I played this game called Seismic, which is like a giant, very American-y, like thematic game where you're like fighting a war, like the planet is crumbling under your feet, you're trying to launch off in your giant ship, but like the core gameplay loop was like all around like this core efficiency puzzle of like playing cards, trying to like maximize use of your cards. And I was like, like that part of it, like in my head as I was playing, it's like that's very Euro-y. Like, the whole game itself, not a Euro game, but like the stuff about it that was like, I'm trying to like be efficient, maximize these game systems. That was making my brain think that's kind of Euro-y.
Well, I think that's something where after 30 years and the world that we live in, right? There's these aesthetic touch points that you can trace back that feel very Euro-y and might not very Euro game at all. And I think that's something where we've ended up with this sort of like, does this word really have utility in our common vernacular now? Or are we all using it to mean too many different things and it's not useful at all? Because I do think some people experience a game that has a Euro element and say, oh, it's a Euro game because it has this Euro element. And that's not really what I think the word is best used for. I'm having fun. Can we do 5 more and then we can close?
Well, okay. I was just going to say, like, I think that if this episode has demonstrated anything, it's that there is no shared understanding of a Euro game.
Yeah, like to answer Brendan's question, not useful.
Yeah, right. Like, okay, Kanban is our first Lacerda on the list. I think that Vital Lacerda's games are like the sicko version epitome of like modern Euro design taken to its furthest extreme. Like to its furthest extreme.
Agreed. And that's what I was calling this sort of like complex
thematic Euro game.
Now, what about Heat? Don't tell me Heat is a Euro. God, Brendan, no.
Yeah, dude, we already been
absolutely.
Over this. Deck building, always Euro game.
Stop.
I definitely think this is a modern Euro game.
What?
What about it isn't modern Euro? It's like
because we're just driving race cars. Like it is like so directly thematic and so directly interactive that like
not that interactive.
Okay, but like if all I'm doing when I'm playing Heat is just an efficiency puzzle, then like it's the most boring game in the world.
But like it is pretty boring.
So then why even have other players? just like track how many turns it takes you to win. Like what the heck?
But by that definition,
you all broke me. You all broke me. You all broke me.
I'm just kidding about Heat being boring. I think I do like Heat, but no, but I think that like that to me feels like very much like the player interaction is like it's very indirect and sparse, right? I don't know.
So I just draw a hand of cards, like play the ones that help me race on the racetrack the fastest. And
so convince me, like you're saying it's an OG Euro game.
No, I think that it's like
Just a
It's
racing
a racing game. It's a like
So I
it
think-
does not belong in the bucket that says Euro.
Well,
game.
next you'll tell me
belongs in the
Magical
bucket that's-
Athlete and Hot Streak aren't Euro games.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. That's what you guys are about to.
This is really helpful because I think for Pete, and I don't think you're alone in this. This is why I want to emphasize it. I think for you, Pete, an element of someone using the word Euro, there is this thread of that is about it being an economic-ish game. By nature. So by nature of Heat being a racing game puts it in a different genre.
Yeah.
Right?
I think I'm
That's what
using the term the way people actually use it today. And I
Okay,
think you guys are
okay.
gaslighting me.
What are you
Oh
talking
my
about? Do you think all right, we have to do like a poll. I think
Quacks.
the majority of people would definitely call Heat a Euro game.
The majority, you think?
100%. I bet like
Okay.
80%.
I'm so excited for the Discord discussion on this one.
Quacks is interesting, but it's definitely a modern Euro, right? Because you're
I don't
like
know.
doing
Well, I mean,
everything
if
is all
Dominion,
about
if
your
Dominion's
personal
a Euro, then
yeah,
Quacks
it's
is a
all
Euro.
about it's all about your
For me,
personal thing, building your own combos.
Right. So, so we're into, I
It's
think,
basically
Brendan's
Heat. You're just
discussion
racing.
right. So we're into Brendan's discussion of aesthetics.
I don't think Dominion
right?
is, by the way.
And
yeah.
Okay, great. I think I would be down with that. Because
He's like, any game I like can't be a modern Euro.
No, that's not true. I said I like the Terra Mystica games, right? I mean, but I think that like we're talking about aesthetics of a game. We're talking about aesthetics not just in presentation, but aesthetics in like the maybe emotional experience of playing a game, aesthetics in sort of what the game tells you is important, aesthetics in a variety of ways. And like when people are using the term Euro and what that aesthetically means as a genre, they're not thinking about games like Heat. They're not thinking about maybe games like Quacks, because those belong in different buckets. If we're just using this as a broad umbrella term for anything with an efficiency puzzle, then we should just say efficiency puzzle.
But like that begs the question, like where would you put Quacks then?
In the same group as Wonderland's War, but way more complicated.
No, I think Wonderland's War is closer to a war game. Like
I haven't played it. I'm just trying to now. I'm just poking you guys.
That's fine.
I mean, I guess you could say like Quacks is like a hybrid between like modern Euros and like Ameritrash.
Push your luck games.
Of a game like Can't Stop, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Because Can't Stop, not a Euro.
What's funny about Quacks is it's almost like the aesthetic line between for Quacks a Euro game and a party game is like where I would put it in the.
It's so interesting because like as we were having the definition, I'm so glad we did this like random naming games thing, because like as we were having this definition, it all felt so clear to me. Like, yeah, there's obviously like two genres now, OG games and modern Euros. And then when we start doing this, like, and it felt like we had some consensus too, like as we were discussing it. But as we started doing this, it just all falls apart.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Anachrony is a modern Euro. It's a modern Euro I really, really like. Okay. So don't say Pete doesn't like any Euros, right? Anachrony. Does it help that you put your worker in a giant mech suit? Yeah. It absolutely helps. Does that make me shallow? Maybe, but that's fine. What else do we have here? Blood on the Clock Tower. Not a Euro.
Not a Euro.
There's like no Euro mechanisms at all. Right.
No, it's just the Eurofied version of Resistance, obviously.
I have two.
Okay.
Welcome to not a Euro.
It's a roll and write, right? So that's the thing.
It's a roll and
I
write.
would put it in a different genre. It's a roll and write.
Agreed.
All roll and writes are modern Euros.
So, oh god. Okay, I
agree. I can agree. Modern Euro.
That's the thing.
So
I always put
polyomino
puzzle games to me are like their own genre. Like if we're saying modern Euro is a genre, modern Euro is a genre.
Okay, then it has to be as specific as polyomino tile laying games.
Well, that's the thing. We mix up, and so I'm so sorry, listeners. This is happening at 1 hour 10 in the episode, but like, because there's a difference. We sometimes will say like worker placement is not a genre; that's a mechanism, right? And so polyomino tile laying is a mechanism.
Right.
So right.
Not a genre.
However,
Roll and
Is-
write mechanism. It is.
Right. Yeah, right. So, but I think sometimes you get a line cross to where it can say more about the experience of playing a game than just that has this mechanism, right?
Also, roll and write games are a genre because they're not all roll and write, right? So it's an aesthetic that's shared between all these games that use these different mechanisms. And I think that's fair. For the Isle of Cats, that is a polyomino drafting game that uses but the Princes of Florence, Jake, the Princes of Florence.
Great example. That's an OG game that uses this mechanism. Isle of Cats is a modern Euro game that uses this mechanism. And I honestly, what? I mean, I think I'm not trying
All right, so
to.
Jake is Patchwork a Euro?
Just real quick, like I genuinely think Welcome to is a modern Euro version of a roll and write style game because you're like doing your own little player board puzzle. Like, I mean, how there's no interaction.
What about Patchwork?
Patchwork is in the Azul Seven Wonders Duel category.
Man, we should have stopped the episode like 10 minutes ago.
Oh my gosh. Listen, guys, if we won the Golden Geek and this is the next episode that comes out, they're going to take that award back from us. They're going to take it
that's
away.
What we want. That's what we want.
They're going to say, never mind. Never mind. Never mind.
Man. It's okay because we're not going to win.
Yeah, right. Just so listeners know, that's the timing of when this was recorded is we don't know who won that. But
they'll be like, that's cute that they thought they had a chance. Well, I think this has been a really wide-ranging discussion. We kind of knew that going in. So appreciate listeners for bearing with us. I have no doubt that this is going to create a lot of wonderful discussion in our Discord. So we would absolutely love it if you would join us there to continue this discussion. Help us categorize games. Help us decide what the official genres are and the official sliders for figuring them out. And I think that's the end of our episode. So thank you all so much for joining us. We want to thank Hembry, as always, for our intro and outro song, Reach Out. And you can find more at decisionspacepodcast.com.
Bye, everyone.
At the very least, it was illustrative of a problem.
We officially have decided this is tough.
Not useful.
Not useful.
Bye now.